Well, I would have to say maybe the most important landmark is the Mount Carmel Congregational Church, because it represents the birth of Hamden. It was the ecclesiastical society that got started there in 1764, I believe, and that was the seat of the town government. It was called the Meeting House back in those days, before before we were the United States of America. In community until the Industrial Revolution, what is now Route 10 Whitney Avenue was an important way to get to and from the various marketplaces. There was the canal, the Farmington Canal, which was built in the 1820s and was still functioning, but was displaced, as so many canals like it were displaced, by railroad. The railroad did run through Hamden, and the Farmington Canal line. It still did passenger service until the early 1930s, and freight service until the 1960s. And there was an explosion of sorts in the population of Hamden in the about the first decade. It's funny too, because some people still kind of erroneously call it a city. It's not a city, it's a town. It's got a large population, and physically it's a pretty large town. It's just under 33 square miles. But I believe it has something to do with the laws controlling firearms. That in the state of Connecticut, you cannot discharge weapons within city limits. And there's a gun club here in Hamden. When an attempt was made many years ago to make it into a city, because I guess Milford became a city at one time. It was the town of Milford. We decided to stay a town. Albeit a big town, but it's still a town. A very stark difference, even from my memory, going back to the early 1950s. The most dramatic change, of course, was the Magic Mile, Dixwell Avenue, between the railroad bridge and where the high school is now. But if you proceed, say, north of the town hall into Mount Carmel, a huge change took place in the mid-70s when they put the connector in. Almost everything between Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church and Ives Street got wiped out. Quinnipiac University has had a huge effect on the north end of town, which it's built on a large tract of land, as you know, opposite Sleeping Giant, which I remember when it was a rhubarb patch. A lot of development, a lot of post-war housing was necessary, and that may account for the large growth of population between 1950 and 65. As far as industry goes, the web shop was built in 1875 because the buildings that had been there before in Centerville, approximately where the Parkway crosses today, Route 15 crosses just south of the town hall. On the east side of Whitney, in 1875 and early 1876, a large, big mill-type factory was built there along the Mill River. And it was added on to numerous times over the course of the next 65 years. And it was, at one time, the largest employer of residents of the town of Hamden. And then it suffered during the Depression. In fact, in 1937, the Chamber of Commerce made an effort to try to sell it, find some, perhaps some entrepreneur who wanted to open up a factory. And it's a good thing nobody bought it, because 2 years later, eminent domain, through eminent domain, the state took it over, and it was demolished in 1940 to make way for the Parkway, which actually didn't go through until after the war because of the war. And the following year, the Hamden Plaza opened. It was the first strip mall in the state of Connecticut, and that attracted people from all parts of the southern Connecticut area, and of course many other towns followed suit in the years that followed.